The meeting is being recorded. Welcome, everybody, to episode 18 of this humble little ZOOMCAST that commenced during an initial lockdown. And I'm proud to say we're almost out of lockdown bloody 5. I'm Matt Grima. Welcome. And gee whiz, we've got a special guest in the building, one of Melbourne's most charismatic real estate agents and auctioneers, a man that's been in the industry for a lot longer than some of the people that listen to this have been alive. I speak, of course, of the great Marcus Peters. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you, Matt. I'm not going to argue with that. Normally, I like to argue, being a short guy, but I'm not arguing.
Now, as you normally do, you have dressed the part beautifully, jumping on ZOOMCAST. You're fully suited. You got the great hat on, and that's how most people would know you on a Thursday or a Saturday at inspections. You always dress to impress.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's my background. I come from a background of tailors. My father, his name was Avey, and he had brothers Maury, Izzy, Barney, and Susie, and they all had a clothing factory in South Melbourne. So even as a kid going to school, I always all my gear, all my sports coats, my trousers, everything was all tailor made. And all I wanted to do was go down to Haddams and wear stuff like the other kids, but everything was all measured for me. So it's that family background, the rag trade, in the schmutters. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And I'm curious. I mean, a lot of people, if you've been in real estate and you've been in real estate circles, and particularly now by the Bay specifically, you're going to know the name Marcus Peters. There's going to be a lot of people, Marcus, that are younger people that have just gotten into the industry in the last couple of years that have been kind enough to tune in to a ZOOMCAST episode. Available on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, by the way, Marcus.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're on there now as well, believe it or not. We've got 4 viewers at the moment, so we are flying. But quite seriously, so there will be many people that know the name Marcus Peters, but there'll be a lot of people that may not have met you or may not have heard of you. I love a character and I love a story, and that's where ZOOMCAST originated from. I think you're one of the best. Talk to me about your backstory. How did you get into being an estate agent?
Okay, so got married at 22. Working in a family business. I thought too many relations, about 11 relations. Then I decided I was in menswear. Then I got a job in a couple of retail shops in Elizabeth Street selling suits. And then all of a sudden I was retrenched because the guys that I worked for owned the business and sold it, so I didn't have a job.
Right.
So I found a little business for sale in Puckle Street, Moonee Ponds, next to Sims Sports Store, and I called it Marcus Adrian Menswear. And for 12 years, I had a retail shop, selling suits, and I had another one in South Melbourne for about 6 years in Clarendon Street, in where they've got that shopping centre now, Coles and the Fox FM and all that. There were shops there, so I was in there. So there I am in the wonderful world of real estate. At the same time, I certainly have a passion for football, and I was playing football after I left school. I went and down and played football at the Corfu Grammarians, and we were hovered between A and B grade, and quite a few of my mates had got into real estate. Anyway, one of them in particular, a guy called Glenn Fletcher, who I like to, he had a news agency in Chadstone Shopping Centre, and all of a sudden he sells that and gets a job at Hodges. And I thought, real estate, Glenn's gone into Hodges, I thought you needed all these degrees and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, down at the football club, there's a guy there playing called Campbell Cooney, who now one of the partners of Hodges. Spoke to Campbell, spoke to Glenn, and they got me an interview with a guy called Simon Conquest. And cut a long story short, I got a job in Hodges in Park Street, South Melbourne. So the boss said to me, "You got the job, Marcus?" I said, "Oh, fantastic." And then he says, "And now you got to go to school." School? Shit, mate. So for 2 weeks, I drove down, living in Brighton. I drove down to Frankston to the uni down there and did the agents reps course. And then bang, all of a sudden. And I was about 35, 36. And that was in August 1988. And that's when I met a guy called Graham Wilson. And about 4 or 5 months later, I met a guy called Tony Pride.
Yep.
In my first couple of months of selling, I was sitting in my office and my boss was Gary Murphy, who passed away earlier this year. He was a great mentor of mine, and certainly I owe a lot to him as well, teaching me. And anyway, Graham in 1 month got 18 lists and 18 sales. In September 1988, he got onto a block of flats, 76 Queens Road, that went from company share to strata and sold 18.
Yep.
About a couple of months later, I'd been in real estate, and everyone talks about, real estate 101 and open for inspections 101 and what you should and shouldn't do. Everything's 101. So this particular, I'd only been in real estate about 10 weeks, and I'm selling a studio on Beaconsfield Parade Middle Park. Okay, so we key safe the property, and I'm taking a buyer through, and of course I don't ring the vendor, right? Don't ring the vendor.
Okay.
So the 101 out the door, open for, don't ring the vendor. I've got 3 people that want to go through the studio. I've got what I call an elderly lady, probably my age now, back 30 years ago. I've got a couple of investors. I've got these 3 people and myself. So I go to the studio on Beaconsfield Parade, and I thought, well, I'm not going to open the door and walk in, and they follow me because it looked too small. So what I did, I opened the door, turned on the light, and let the lady walk in.
Right.
First thing that happened, the vendor was at home. Second thing that happened, he was having sex. The third in the studio, and the third thing he was having sex with a man. I didn't know he was gay. So all of a sudden I heard this yelling and screaming, right? And I'm quickly trying to close the door, and I could see what was happening. And the other 2 blokes were wanting to get in, wanting to know what was happening. And I quickly closed the door, didn't worry about the key safe, apologised to the woman, got in my car, and drove back to the office.
Right.
And I thought, shit, I'm in trouble. My career, only been in it 10 weeks, I'm gone, absolutely gone.
Right.
Anyway, I walked into the office, and in life, when your boss or someone wants to tell you off and they're laughing, well, that's, he was like told me off.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Merv had a grin on his face. And of course, the whole office knew.
Yeah.
So this is my introduction to sex and to real estate.
Marcus,
that's a true story.
I believe you. I think all your stories are true, and we're going to get plenty more stories coming out. Gee whiz, there's a fair bit to unpack in that. Can I go back to the start?
Yeah.
That story's a beauty, by the way. And when you transitioned out of the rag trade into real estate, and I know that you were, oh my God, I've got to go to school and I've got to do all this jazz, but how were you able to utilize the strengths that you had as a menswear salesperson or business owner into real estate, particularly being in South Melbourne? I'd imagine that you would have built a fair amount of connections and contacts that might have rolled through to your real estate career. Would that be fair?
Yeah, you're right, Matt. The hard part, the good part was that I'd already had a network. I had a network by playing amateur footy.
Yep.
I had a network by going to school like Caulfield Grammar through connections and mates. I had a network through the rag trade, and I had a network being Jewish. So they all had all these interconnecting communities, networks. But the key is they knew me as Marcus selling the suits.
Right.
They didn't know me as Marcus. Now he's in real estate. So that was the transition. But a couple of things that happened to me. In my first 10 months of real estate, I sold one house 3 times.
First how long? 10 months?
Yeah, I sold it 3 times.
Right. Tell me why.
I couldn't believe it. Well, it was in Page Street, and it's between, I might be 78 or 76. It's between Kerford Road and Victoria Avenue.
Yep.
One of 3, a red brick Edwardian. Anyway, first time I sold it, a guy buys it, and I thought, well, once you buy a house, you buy a house, that's it. I didn't realise people turned it over like they changed their underwear or their shirts. So a few months later, he said, look, I can't afford this. Can you sell it? Yeah. So I sold it again, and then I sold it again.
Right.
And after that was a light bulb moment in my mind to think that it's something. Once you sell a suit, you can't sell it again. Once there's no resale. And that's the light bulb moment, certainly in properties. And a number, looking back over the years, there are obviously, being in it so long, there are a number that I've resold. It's been amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Yep.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And no doubt, I mean, the amount of contacts that you would have built up over that journey continues to this day. I'll give you a story, and you're going to have far more stories than I have. But when I put a little teaser up of saying to some of the Zoomcast listeners that I was about to get on Marcus Peters as a special guest, I got a call by a man by the name of Jack Moss, who you might know quite well, who's a bloody good estate agent out of Marshall White's Stonington division. And Mossy gave me a call and said, oh, I love that bloke. And I said, oh, really? I didn't know that you knew him. Tell me why. And he tells me this story about how he bumped into you on at an open for inspection, I think on St Kilda Road. Do you know where I'm going with this? Or you do indeed. You do indeed. So Well, you can tell the story.
No, you can. No, be more credible.
Well, this is from Mossy's mouth, and this is you might have asked him a question or something about the property or the building, and Jack, who's a bloody good young estate agent who's been in real estate for ever since he was 18, I reckon. He pulled out a little notebook out of his suit, and he's referring to the notebook to try and find the answer to a question that you might have asked him. And I think that little notebook might have impressed you when you pulled out something similar, but maybe had a little bit more pizzazz about it with a leather-bound cover as opposed to the yellow 69-cent notebook. Jack told me that you organised and sent him one as a gift to the Armidale office to say nice to meet you, and here's a personalised leather-bound notebook. Is that right?
Correct, absolutely. And to this day, I always, and if you open it up and if they can see, anything the pink that I mark, highlights, is to do with money. So it might be something that triggers my brain, might be to get back to people, but I've carried that and I've probably gone through, I don't know, like 50, hundreds of these books. And so what I do now, I used to get them printed I used to get them made in Bali, black leather, but I now go to the Japanese department store, Dazio, and they're in Queen Vic. That costs $2.80 in that leather, like that. And all it is just different things that you want to open up. Someone here, Relax at St. Moritz, ringing. It might be just different people. Rick Grono sold him a house in Paran, wrote his name down. Just all bits and pieces. And when I see that, it triggers. That's sort of my old school computer, if you like.
Got it. That is amazing. Now you would have run out a few pink highlighters in your career, given that
absolutely,
pink represents the money markets. You'd be all over it.
Absolutely, no, you're true. Absolutely, I was looking for one just before. That's a true story. I was looking for one.
That is a very funny story. And Jack said that happened about 7 or 8 years ago, and he said, "Mate, I tell you what, as a young bloke in the industry, it made such an impression on me that A, we made a connection, B, I'd never met the bloke before, and then C, I rock up at the office a week or two later and there was a gift waiting for me with a leather-bound notebook." And it's the little things in life. I know that Steinway tells that very a pretty famous story now about the lemon and how he went to list a property with a guy that's had ordered some fish and chips and they forgot his lemon, and he was so bloody devastated. And Steinway took a lemon to this listing appointment for a very, very prestigious house, and got the listing based on that level of customer service. And those little stories I absolutely love. Absolutely.
And it's true, the 1%ers, absolutely, Matt, make a difference, because we're all good. We're all, the vendor's got to make a decision, or someone's got to make a decision. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. So you make sure that everything is stacked in your way. That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Can I be cheeky? How old are you?
68.
68. What's been your take of the world in the last 18 months with our little friend COVID, and how it's had a specific impact on you, on your home life, on your career? What's your take on it all?
So I've got 3 kids, 8 grandkids. I've got a beautiful partner, and I've got Robin. And basically, I had a daughter in Cambodia teaching. She got out with a husband and 3 kids. Before that, they were living in Broome. They're now living in Darwin. Got a house up there well. I've got another daughter, lives in Geelong. She's a town planner, works for a big infrastructure company. They're good. I've got a son, would you believe, after 25 years in hospitality, wants to go into real estate. He was a partner at Mamacita, the Mexican restaurant top of Collins Street. He can speak Spanish. He's got 3 kids under 5, so it's been bedlam for him.
Yeah.
Okay, really tough. Then I bring it back to, so it's been really tough. It's been challenging. I think a couple of things that have resonated in my brain. One, I was educated to think that the federal government was in charge of Australia. That ain't the case. Okay. The states have got a lot more power than we were educated to believe.
Sure.
I'm not going to the pros and cons, but that's what's happened.
Yep.
I think the other thing that's really surprised me, and I'll bring it locally back to real estate, with all the things that are available, with all the information, with everything online, it's all about the gut. Could you imagine 3 years ago that someone would buy a house at 3 Addison Street pay that price, right, with not even with 2 weeks. You can't look at it for 2 weeks, but you can come online and you can bid and you can buy it. Okay. Who would have thought that you're going to buy $1 million properties, not go through it, not even check, but just because you can? That's been amazing. Yeah. Totally amazing. Yeah. That part of the market has been absolutely amazing. And when you think of all the articles that are written about go and get a builder, check your fine, and do all the due diligence in the world, and today people are just putting their hands up like we are on a screen, and saying, I'll buy it, I'll buy it, I'll buy it. That's been totally amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Yeah. That part of the market. I started in a time when interest rates were 18 to 20%.
Yeah, I was going to say late 80s.
And I can remember you'd sell a property on 60 days settlement, and the vendor would ring up a day or two after the auction, say, "Oh, Marcus, you sold it on 60 days. Now I've got to make 2 payments to the bank. It's not going to matter what I owe the bank because I've had to sell. See if you can get a 48-day or a 52-day, so I only have to make 1 payment because I haven't got the money to make the second part." That's how tough things. So it was.
Did you do deals back in the late 80s and maybe even the early 90s on vendor terms? Was that?
I bought a house in Elwood on vendor terms personally.
You did personally?
Remember, yeah. I'll tell you, I bought 2A Vortier Street.
Yeah, good address.
Yeah, for $270,000.
Jeez.
It was a brick vanilla built by the Finkelstein family. I bought it on a 3-year vendor terms.
Marcus, for those who don't know what vendor terms are, can you break that down in layman's terms?
Basically what vendor terms are, it's really the vendor financing you, the buyer. So normally the vendor hasn't got a mortgage on the property, okay? And what he does, he wants a price, but he knows he's not going to, he can't, maybe the price is a bit much, maybe the market's a bit tough for buyers. So what he does, he'll give an opportunity to someone to buy a property through vendor terms. So the place that I bought in Elwood in the early, I think it would have been, say, around 1990, 91, it was like $100,000 down.
Yep.
I had to come up with.
Yep.
And then over every 6 months had to make a periodic payment. And then at the end of 3 years, there might have been another balloon of about 50 or 75,000. I paid that out. Right. So I had that house, I think, for 4 or 5 years. I got a permit for 4 townhouses and sold it.
Amazing. You know, I've been in real estate 11 years, and I've never come across vendor terms before until the Royal Commission banking fiasco in sort of 2018. People needed to get creative on how to sell property, and it started to come up, not overly often, but it was something that was mentioned a few times in some deals that might have got done as a result of going about it that way to try and exclude the bank and maybe look at constructing a different deal or opportunity for both. So
yeah, what happens, Matt? You take over responsibility of the property, so you've got to insure it. You pay all the rates. So it's a bit more than a license agreement. The only issue is you haven't had to pay the stamp duty till at the end because you haven't bought it. Right. You've got, if you like, a 3-year settlement where you make increment payments.
Right.
Sometimes what you do, you might capitalise the interest onto the price because if you can do that.
Yep.
Okay. You can capitalise interest onto the price, or you pay a figure plus interest. It depends on the vendor, how the vendor is situated. He might want to capitalise into the price because he's had it as an investment property or not investment. Yeah. However, that's something for the accountants to work out.
Yep.
But it doesn't happen so much today because interest rates are low, but it happened certainly in the 80s and in the 90s when interest rates were high.
Yeah.
Buyers couldn't get finance from the banks. Okay. They had a sizable deposit, but they couldn't get a balance. Don't forget, when I started in real estate, State Bank had gone broke, Pyramid had finished. So financing was today financing's not the problem, to be perfectly honest.
Yep. Yep. Where do you see this current little bubble that we're in real estate wise? It's certainly the strongest climate I've seen, and no doubt it'll be one of the strongest you've seen in your time. Where do you see this heading? Do you think it's going to remain as strong as it's been? Do you see a little dip? Do you think interest rates will have an impact?
I think that everybody, the issue today is that the marketplace of stock has changed so much. I know you and I had a chat a couple of days ago. So you've got one market that's ripping along, homes with backyards and front yards, and what I call the Daggy Villa units, older style apartments. That's all going along really well.
Right.
And throw in the rural towns. You get places in the city, CBD, South Bank, Docklands, high-rise apartments. They've gone backwards. Those sort of properties are like buying a new car. As soon as you drive it out of the showroom, it goes backwards.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that unfortunately the people that own those, when they hear real estate and prices going up, they tend to get a bit phased. I think their properties they're actually gone backwards. Yep. And with the rents that have gone down in those areas, it's going to be a lot of years. So they're going to go through a lot of hurt. The people that own them, they probably need, if they can, they need to hold on to them for 2 or 3 years and just unless they want to cop a loss now. I still think that our market's driven by interest. Okay, so I asked a mortgage broker. I said, if a young couple are buying a property and they're going to borrow 500,000, and say they borrow 550, how much does the extra 50 cost them? Do you know it costs an extra 50,000? $28 a week on a 25-year loan. That's breakfast and 2 coffees. Yep. So the issue is people get carried away with value. It's not it's actually the cost of money. Okay, how long it's going to continue, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I have 2 others, but it's all about demand and supply. But right now, interest rates are low, and people shouldn't be renting. I mean, they talk about affordability. Even if you bought one of those high-rise apartments, right? Nothing wrong with buying it and living it, because what you do, your deposits there, even after 4 or 5 years, even if it's only gone up 10%. If you paid 400, it's gone up. There's 40 grand tax-free because it's your own home. You put your 40 grand deposit, there's 80. You paid off another 10 off the mortgage. So in 5 years' time, instead of just having 40, you've got 90 grand. So you go and buy the house you want. Yep. I think there's a bit of, I'm not saying what I did was correct, but I also bought my first house on vendor terms. I forgot to tell you. So 22, I'm working for a Lebanese family in the city selling suits, and I bought a 1-bedroom villa unit in Brunswick. So I've moved back from the Bagel Belt, Caulfield, Elwood, back to Brunswick with my wife at the time. Yep. And we bought a villa unit in Garden Street, Brunswick, for 20,000. And it was and I had to borrow 17,000 from the a loan, AGC advances. You had to get a little book paid each, and I borrowed 3 grand from the bank through my father as an overdraft. That was a deposit, and I paid it off. And about 4 years later, I bought a house. I didn't think I could afford it. My wife found a house at 315 St Kilda Street, Brighton, on about 10,000 square feet, and we bought that for 68,000 on the Golden Mile.
Gee whiz!
I know.
You know, it's nice. It's nice to hear you put it as simply as you did, and particularly for younger people that are trying to scratch together a deposit or understand how it might work. And perhaps buying something in the short term and living in it as an owner occupier would far beat renting in an apartment or a place that you want to be short term, and then it'll allow you to create that stepping stone opportunity to move on to bigger and better things. So, mate, you put it beautifully as you normally do. I want to ask you a couple of questions, and you can tell me to get stuffed. So, no, you can, quite seriously. So you've been in this for 3 and a bit decades.
Yep.
What keeps you in this gig? Why do you still get out of bed and do what you do? Is it purely based on the relationships and contacts that you've built, or is it more than that?
It's probably so. After the hardest part in my job was when I went into real estate. Was the 7-day a week because we work Sunday. We want to create something different. With it starting Wilson Pride, because we did 30 odd years anyway. And I sort of it was a bit like a footy match. You know, you train up, it's exciting. You know, show day, Saturday and Sunday if you're working Sunday. I just think the thrill of the chase. I like competing with people. Actually, I like working with people. Okay. So this lockdown's been very hard for me because my business isn't done in the office. People don't walk. I go out to see people, and I love meeting in cafes. I love going and looking at property. I love really meeting people. So I've still got the hunger in my belly, and it's not a case of the money's always secondary. And I always say that to anybody that if you're worrying about the commission in real estate, probably in other sales areas as well, it won't happen. Put that aside. If you get the deal, if you get the listing and you get the sale, the money will be there. That's not the problem. The issue is competing and getting the listing.
You know, the strength of the market at the moment, in my opinion, is going to do two things, and I've already seen it. One is it's going to bring a lot of new estate agents into the business. It always does. When people see a market excelling and showing some really strong results, people go, "Oh, geez, maybe real estate's a bloody good career to get into. Maybe that's where I need to be." So you'll see the amount of agents in an industry go up. The second thing you'll see, which I think is for obvious reason, you're more unlikely than likely seeing agents move from one agency or one brand to another brand because everybody's pretty happy with the way things are going at the moment. Most of the movement, be it out of the industry completely or agency to agency, comes in markets that are actually showing some dips, and we saw that again in that 2018 Royal Commission period, didn't we?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The other thing that's becoming very interesting, Matt, is that as a licensed agent, the amount of soliciting I get, and I'm sure that because I'm not part of a big group,
Sure.
and I'm more or less on my own per se,
Yep.
but under a banner of Whiting Professionals. But I get a lot of information from different groups wanting to do the back end. And for me, happy for me to be Marcus Peters, Marcus, whatever, real estate. There's a lot of that going on. Very amazing. Where they'll come along and they'll say, right, we'll do all your account sales, we'll do your advertising, we'll do all the accounting. You just worry about list and sell. There's a lot of that that's going on. So you're going to find. I even got a phone call this morning from a guy never met. Turns out same religion. Barracks for the Bombers. Grew up in Nidring, and he's an estate agent. And he's got an organisation back in Brisbane that are backing him. And he's, would you believe, lives in Bow Morris. And I'm catching up with him Friday morning. He was looking for an auctioneer. And I do hire myself out to do auctions for people that, mates of mine. I do quite a bit for Shape Group, a guy called Jamie Weir,
Yep.
and other people. So I do a lot of conjunction. So I'm more than happy to, to go along and, if they need an auction, if it fits into my timing.
Now, for those of you who do know you, or we can hear you on a Saturday, and I've heard you around town going, "Oh, Marcus is calling an auction somewhere near me," because I could hear you ranting and raving like a madman. Have you always been a huge character and personality when it comes to your auctions, or have you built that over time? And what do you think your auctioneering has done for your profile as an estate agent over the years?
I think I was very lucky that I met a guy called Tony Pride.
Yeah.
And I ask everybody before anything happens, I'm telling you, go and see. Tony Pride's got a couple of things about him that are unique. He never talks about the property. Never, ever. He'll bang the board.
As the auctioneer, you mean?
Yeah, never talks about the property.
Right.
I'm telling you, if you haven't seen Tony, do yourself a favour. Go and see Tony Pride auction. He's amazing.
Yep.
Absolutely. And the wit, and he's a classic comedian and very enthusiastic and fantastic. Okay, so I learned a lot from Tony, so much so that when I prepare my auction, I've just got one sheet of paper.
Yep.
He started me one sheet of paper where that's all you do, and that's all I've worked on. So you had your headlines and then you added to it. I think the beauty about being an auctioneer means you can do just about everything in the cycle. Now, Graham Wilson's a great agent, was never an auctioneer, only ever did one auction, and it was a huge success. It was a divorce, and he got 30 over the reserve about 25 years ago. Okay, but I just think that for what I want to do, I like it's a little bit of control as well, but I certainly enjoy the showmanship. I really do. Yeah. I'm there as much as I'm there for the vendors and for the property, but I still like to make it, if I can, entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you certainly do that. Do you get any hecklers, or do you get any people that don't love the energy, or are most people on board with it?
Yeah, most people. I mean, a couple of auctions. I remember many years ago where they were auctioning a flat. Alex Robinson, commercial agent, was auctioning a shop in Ackland Street.
Yep.
And it kind of course, the ethnic groups that own shops are actually predominantly Jewish.
Yep.
So we're at this auction. And a true story, and Alex is doing the auction, and he said to this guy, "Sir, are you finished? Are you finished?" And he reports back, "No, I'm Jewish." And the crowd just burst out. No, they don't. Look, the only hecklers would be, the old chestnut. Is it on the market? Yes, it's been on the market for 4 weeks. And every time someone says it's on the market, they don't even bid. So, that's about the only thing that you get. Very, very rarely do people have a crack at you about the doc, because you just say, look, I'm only representing what I've got from the vendor, what the solicitor's prepared. You've had 4 weeks to do your due diligence. You could have asked the question. Nothing's changed. Sir, I suggest you think about what you want to do. Yep. That's all.
Yeah.
Take it into account.
Yep.
And normally, if they do ask a question, they're asking for someone else and they buy the property. Yeah, there aren't too many hecklers. That's for sure. The only time that I auctioned a place in Spencer Street, and I sold it, and someone bid afterwards, and he got a bit physical, this guy. But
Physical?
I stood he was up to punch someone's head in, very aggressive, because he hadn't bid at all. And I'm not joking, there would have been 300 bids. We got $500,000 over the reserve. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was doing this for Tony Pride Real Estate, and he was there buying it for his daughter, and he missed out.
Yeah,
he had a crack at us legally, but no. Once I said sold, that was it.
That's it.
So that was it. No late bids, and even the vendor backed me up, because he had a crack at the vendor.
Yeah,
had a crack at everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, we all get them from time to time. And at the moment, when the market's got some real steam in it, you're going to see some people that are disappointed about missing out on an opportunity or a price that's selling for way more than a price guide was suggesting. And mate, I have to say, I take it to heart. Well, that's maybe strong, but you always want to try and feel like you're genuinely doing the right thing by people. And, sometimes you can't control the way people think or feel post a result. But, I was just interested to get your take on it.
Yeah. I've got a question for you, Matt.
Go for it.
Okay. So what has changed in our area in the marketplace is the proliferation of buyers advocates.
Yep.
Okay. How do you treat them? Do they get more service from you than, say, a normal buyer? Are they forever sending you information, and when you get it, you look at it and say, mate, you haven't conditioned your buyer because that property doesn't exist at that price? How do you? What's your take? I mean, you're being brought up with.
But buyers advocates for mine, I'm really lucky. In the part of the world that you and I work in, we deal with some really top operators that are really good advocates that have been doing it for a long time. So I would like to think I've got some really nice relationships with a lot of advocates in the area. Advocates are great because the ability to share intel or to get some market insight about another property that's sold or another number that was achieved or another process that had been run. I love hearing the war stories about how results have occurred and who bought what and how that all happened. I'd like to think that particularly in an off-market capacity, one of their biggest strengths, no doubt, is having relationships with agents that will present some opportunities. But at the same time, advocate or not, we have a job to do for the seller, and that's to respect their request to have an auction, sell it prior, make buyers aware of where the interest lies or not, etc. So they are treated as fairly as any other buyer in that capacity. So, mate, it sounds like a wishy-washy answer, but that's sort of my thought on it.
Okay. Yeah. Have you ever said to a buyer that maybe you need a buyer's advocate to represent you?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because some people, until they can engage a professional markets, don't necessarily know what they want, and if they're putting some parameters around what they're actually looking for, and they're getting a professional to search for it, then they might actually start to commit to that process more heavily. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Good.
Have you got a different take to me, or
no? But it's interesting because even, for example, the property that we had a chat about that I auctioned down there at Beaconsfield Parade, where I passed it in, and we had 3 people that wanted it. I had one gentleman there after it all finished. He got a bit miffed about it. He said, "Oh, look, I put in I wanted it for 90 days, and then all of a sudden it was passed in to nobody." And he said, then all of a sudden people are talking 30 days, people are talking 60 days. He rang me on the Monday, and I said, "Well, I think maybe you and I should get together and have a cup of coffee, and I'll explain to you how that's the whole idea of putting the bid in. So you as a buyer, have got some sort of control, and it's passed into you.
Yeah.
I said, but you never did that. So all of a sudden it's open house.
Yeah.
And when I said it was, anyone could have a crack. So that's when we picked up people that had, for example, 30 days, or, they're all a bit shy. And then all of a sudden they get a bit miffed about the smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what? And this was on the Monday, bring about 11 o'clock. So, well, what are you doing in the afternoon? Come around for a coffee. Let's say the coffee's still there.
Right. Got it.
Okay. So when you try, it was just interesting,
Can't please everybody, and you run a process.
That's it.
You try to do it fairly and transparently, and some people won't appreciate it, and that's okay. You've got to understand that that's going to happen in this game, and I'm sure you know it more than most.
Yeah.
Tell me, given your industry experience, and a lot of people that have been kind enough to tune into these Zoomcasts are people that have been in the industry on average from, say, 2 to 7 years. That's about the gamut for most people. What makes, and I know this is a very broad question, but in Marcus Peters' opinion, what makes a good estate agent? What are sort of the top 3 or 4 attributes one would want to have to ensure that they have some long-term success in this game?
Memory.
Yep.
You've got to be humble. I mean, all right, we've got a pretty good job. Everyone seems to drive reasonable cars. They've all got a reasonable watch, wear reasonable clothes. We don't get too dirty. So be humble. The old adage, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Okay. And every day you're going to wake up, you're going to be surprised. Like every day is a precedent. Like you think, oh, that's the rule. That's it. It's locked away. Something's going to change.
Yeah.
It's a moving, it's just a moving field, and don't be too despondent. I think what needs to happen is that I think there needs to be a little bit more interaction with some of the agents, just to reach out, have a bit of a chat. If there's something, I often say to, especially the females that I've had as PAs, go and talk to someone who's a real estate agent who happens to be a female. Ask them what it's like. I'm sure they'd love to talk to you. Don't be shy. Ring them up, have a chat, take them out for a coffee. And the same goes for the blokes. Just communicate with people. Just to have a bit of a chat, have a bit of a talk. We all operate in the same backyard. Happy to help. Happy to I mean, whatever you lose or whatever you gain, it's not going to make a difference. And you'd be surprised that when you ask somebody for advice or something, they'll give it to you. And if you're just starting out, and I've said this to my son, I think it's important to have a good mentor. And wherever you go, I think it's important to have a good structure. I've noticed that a few of the guys my age have got their children working in their businesses. I don't agree with that. That's just a personal thing. I went into a family business. It was a waste of time. I think they're better off going to work for strangers, go and learn a structure and go and find out what it's like. Because no matter how good you are, you're still the boss's son.
Yep.
And no matter how bad you are, you'll be the boss's son.
Yep.
So until you prove yourself somewhere else, especially in this particular game, and it doesn't hurt to start off in rentals. If I had my time over, but I was 3 kids, married, and couldn't spend the time in rental, it's not a bad education. I mean, sales is fantastic, but you can certainly learn a lot out of rentals, believe you me. Simple as.
Is your boy going to go from Mamacita to a different estate agent? He's not going to work with you?
No.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, because I've got my life now, my business is in my head.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I think, and I look back, at, and I think about family businesses and connections. I mean, if something comes up and he's at something, as if I'm not going to give it to him, I'm not going to.
Of course.
I'm not going to. He's got 3 grandkids. So I just think, but he needs to go and he needs to find a mentor.
Yep.
And he needs to go to a brand, and you need to have structure.
Yep.
That's especially when you're starting off. Absolutely. Yep. And who knows what happens? I don't know. 3, 4, 5, and whatever. But that's what I think he needs.
Yeah.
And that's what he's going to do. So he's got a great network. Being in hospitality, he went to uni for 1 week. I thought he was going to be a junior. He was at Melbourne High. Went to uni anyway. So he's got a great network. Lives in Hampton East. 3 kids. 2 of them at school. So he's going to meet a lot of people. So he's now going through another stage of his life. He's 42, and he'll get to meet people that will know him these new people that he's
Yeah.
going to meet as an estate agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't have contacts, and not to talk about me,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
didn't have any contacts coming to Marshall White in this part of town. So grew up in a different area, went to school in a different area, played sport in a different area. So for those that don't have a lot of contacts or a lot of connections, what advice do you have for those people? How do you build relationships well, and how do you build rapport well? And they're two things that, if I could identify you, would be incredibly strong at both.
Okay. I joined a marketing group about 8 years ago, and it's when I had the Big and Scott office in St Kilda Road.
Yep.
And there was a guy there, and he was a rep for a printing minute press. And he said to me, "Oh, Marcus, what are you doing Friday morning?" And I was, at that stage, I was running around the town with my daughter. And I said, "Look, I run around the town Friday with my daughter, Anna." And he said, "Oh, look, I'd like you to come to a marketing meeting." "What do you mean marketing?" He said, "Oh, B and I." I went, "Nah, nah." As soon as I said no, I thought he was going to cry. Anyway, I said, all right, I'll come. Well, I've been going ever since.
Is that right?
Yeah, I've been going, and just to tell you that the B&I group that I'm in is now leaving B&I. We're going somewhere else.
Got it.
Okay, but something like that is fantastic. It gives you structure. You get to meet people. You got to talk about yourself. There's one thing. I think the other thing, the basic thing, is you should have a few cafes that you go to. I don't know what you did, but I think you need to have a few cafes. I think you need to get involved in as many opens as you can.
Yep.
So when I was at Hodges, I left Hodges after 13 months and went and worked at Hocking Stewart for 6. So I worked under Greg Hocking and Andrew Stewart for 3 months, and then I worked under Peter Kennett, who I went to school with, same year. And as I said to people, he wasn't in the first 18, Peter. It's another story. It's just a bit of a kick in the guts for him. Secondly,
don't know if he'll turn in, but go on.
Yeah, but I can remember opening up properties in Albert Park, and people say, "Oh, look, I know Greg. Oh, look, I know Andrew," and it used to get to me. I said, "Oh, you have to get past that. You have to get past that personality." Yep. So they get to know Marcus, they get to know Matt, they get to know Nicholas, they get to know. Yeah, it's a very hard act, and if you can do that, what you've done is amazing. But it's doable if you persevere. So thing is, you've got to be disciplined. You got to get around to as many opens, many auctions as you can. You've got to hang around what you're opening, understand it, get to meet people, introduce your card, hand out your cards. You've got to meet at certain cafes, get to meet people, introduce, and if you can, join a couple of marketing groups and really put yourself out there, because you've got to remember, who's Matt Grima, who's Marcus? They're not going to knock on the door. You've got to be out there. You've got to be front and centre. And it might even be that you even attach yourself to a particular charity, to whatever it is. And that's not being false. That's just being yourself and forming a network and putting something back in, you know. And you might get nothing out of it, but 5 years later, someone might ring and say, "Oh, Matt, we met at such and such. I got this house. Can you help me? Come and have a look at it." Okay. The important thing is not getting a listing, being on the shopping list. Okay. Yeah. So you've picked a brand that people know of, right, where you are, but they've got to know that it's Matt Grima, not, the other boys. Okay. The Olivers and the Canes and all that sort of crew.
Do you think things like, and not to take away from it as well, because there's a lot of training, a lot of intel out there that's important, but do you think things like listing presentations and phone call analysis and all that deep dive into what we do day to day from a skill set is overrated? Is it more about the relationship with the person, or do you think that sort of stuff can make somebody who doesn't have a lot of relationships a success?
I think look, obviously I'm going to say it's overrated, but there's a discipline that's needed, okay? And the discipline is getting back to people, okay? With your listing presentations, I think the hard part is basically when you meet somebody working out how are you going to attract to them and vice versa. Yeah. Things like, you walk into a house and the backyard faces south. How do you tell them there's no sun? You walk into a place and it's pretty untidy and you wouldn't even have a glass of water. So all the intel and all that's not going to help you with all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So what you've got to be able to do, and that's thinking on your feet, and that's adapting to the situation. Okay. What you've got to do on that Saturday, you've got to get the names, get the phone numbers, remember who lives locally, remember who owns a property. Very hard when you're flat out, but you've got to go back, discipline yourself, go back and and ring the people up. G'day there, my name's Matt. I saw you at the property. Look, I'm not interested. That's okay. You know, I know where I'm in the area. Yeah, and he comes up. Yeah. So you form a relationship. It's all about relationships. You know, I think you can go a bit too overboard with the stats because people do business with people they like.
Yeah.
That was taught to me by a guy called Robert Lane.
Yeah.
Robert Lane Motors. It's true. It's true. And it's not being somebody else, it's just being yourself. And you've got to be yourself because then you will be making the right decisions. If you try to be someone else, you try to be a Kane or an Oliver, not going to happen. Or Matt. Okay. So that's who you get. I'm not saying I'm any better, I'm any worse, but I'm there. I'm passionate about the job. I'll let you know what's happening. I'll keep you informed. And a couple of things, maybe we need to get the painter through. I'll get you a quote. Maybe we need to do a little bit of, you know, some of the grouting in the bathroom needs doing. Let's have a look at that. Let's, you know, all this sort of stuff. So what you should be doing also as an estate agent is getting a handyman, getting all these people that, you know, a glazer, a plumber, electrician. I can't tell you the amount of times people. In fact, we got a phone call yesterday from a woman that rang us up because the receptionist rang me. Do we know a glazer? And we gave her a phone number of glazer because she said to the receptionist, "Oh, you people deal with them all the time. You get it at the right price and you get a professional job." It's true. Estate agents do. So you need to list all these people that you should, that they're your team.
Yeah.
You know, get friendly with the photographer that you use, understand why take that photo, ask him questions. The vendor's going to ask you the same questions. Get to learn, do you want to take a photo of the outside of the building because it looks like shit? You know, get all these, you know, maybe give the cushions a bit of a puff. All these things that are just things that happen. There's no book. There's no book that's written. They've got to puff up the cushions or straighten the bed or hide something. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got to just have a bit of a chat. That's all. And and also ask a vendor, look, why did you buy it? What was it that I often ask that when I'm auctioning, when I have the vendors meeting, I always ask a vendor, I say, well, you tell me what you like about the house. And they go, it's all there. Oh, we like the north-facing backyard. Oh, we're handy to the shops. You've already, but at least you've asked them. There's nothing worse. You sell it. Why didn't you, Marcus, you didn't mention about the shops. If I'd asked them, I would have written it out, would have talked about it. Okay. So I always ask a vendor, what is it you like about the property?
Yeah. Yeah, oh, that's great advice. It really is, and I think anybody who tunes into this, Marcus, is going to get a fair bit out of it. A lot of it will be in their own way, but there's some stuff in there that people can certainly add to their business to get to the next level. You have been a joy. We have whipped through this pretty quickly, and I reckon you and I have got a part two in us one day because there's plenty that you can share, but. Mate, best wishes to you as we come out of another bloody lockdown. I know you'll be as busy as all hell midweek and Saturday, and no doubt myself and the other estate agents in the area will be hearing your auction calls for many years to come. Mate, thanks for being a part of it.
And I want to thank you very much for allowing me to come on, and it's been a pleasure, mate. Bit of patting on backs, but no, I have. I've enjoyed it very much. All the best. Thanks, mate.
Good on you. Thanks for coming on. Cheers,
Bye.
mate.
Ciao. Bye.